Lots to talk about today regarding the Minnesota Vikings. The first unofficial depth chart was released yesterday. Jordan Addison facing a likely suspension, as this video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. But first, Mark Wilf, one of the owners of the Vikings, spoke yesterday on the contract status / future of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell. This is from Kevin Seifert saying, Mark Wilf says the Vikings haven't and won't have conversations about contract extensions with general manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah or coach Kevin O'Connell before the end of this season. Both are entering year 3 of 4-year deals. Wilf said he would not proclaim any litmus tests in public for potential contract extensions, but said ownership's goals to win divisions and ultimately compete for championships has not changed. So really, there's two ways you can choose to absorb that information. The first being nothing to see here. The sense of urgency to get this done, to figure out their future with this organization, it's not here at this moment. They still have 2 years left on their deals. If anything, let's take care of it as they go into the final year of their contracts. And they probably already have their minds made up, Mark and Ziggy Wilf. That's the first way that you can look at it. And I believe that's the more likely thought process for Vikings ownership. The second way you can look at it is, maybe they don't have their minds made up. Maybe they need to see a little bit more. They were super patient with the former head coach and then Kirk Cousins by himself for 6 years. They played the nice guys. They're not going to do it anymore. Damn it, you got to show me something. So then the question becomes, do Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, do they deserve contract extensions? I would say for Kwesi, yes. And this has come full circle for me because 2022 was such a disaster, even in real time. I hated the trade back with the Lions. I hated the pick of Lewis Seen. And admittedly, I was just screaming to the rooftops. I don't think this analytical nerd knows what he's doing. He thinks he can punch formulas into a computer and, hey, here's the roster you should come up with. He's not going to last at all. But to be fair, this man looked himself in the mirror, did a gut check, and said, I can't do that again. He has progressed to greater and greater heights the last 2 off seasons. And one of the knocks against him as well was, hey, bro, you're just riding the coattails of Rick Spielman, the players that he drafted, you inherited. What have you brought to the table? Well, in 2023, last year, he drafted Jordan Addison, who is a bona fide, I would say, borderline star wide receiver too. Just has to get his head out of his ass and stop doing dumb stuff. But he's going to be a star player. You drafted Mekhi Blackman, who tore his ACL. He's going to be out for the year, but he has a promising future. This year, along with the additions you made in free agency, Blake Cashman, Jonathan Greenard, for example, you selected 2 first-round picks, including your quarterback of the future in J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner being the Danielle Hunter replacement. I'm going to defend Kwesi. If it push come to shove, barring some sort of epic disaster next offseason, I think he does deserve a contract extension. He's proven his worth to me. I think he's a top 3rd GM in this league. He went from having the worst draft class in this franchise history to, I would say, the best draft class for this franchise. KOC, I think it gets a bit murky there. There's a debate to be had because on one hand, the culture and the vibes are immaculate. Players want to play for Minnesota. On the other side, as far as play calling specifically, I think there's still much work to be done. 4th and 8, I think there's equal blame between he and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins throwing the check down, but also why is at the time your second best playmaker in TJ Hawkinson, why is he on 4th and 8 running an out route probably 5 yards short of the stick for the season? That was a head scratcher right there. But also last year, the Cincy game, the back-to-back QB tush-push plays that didn't go anywhere, everyone blames Brandon Powell when really it's the center. But whether you want to blame Brandon Powell or Garrett Bradbury, because you don't have the center to get that power, that leverage, even in short yardage, even in inches of a situation. Whether you want to say Brandon Powell shouldn't have been the push guy or Garrett Bradbury, Kevin O'Connell should have known that he doesn't have the offensive line. He doesn't have the players to get that push in that situation. I think play calling is still something he needs to work on. Maybe he's not going to get it at all, and perhaps he should delegate that to someone else, say Wes Phillips. But I think where he has the opportunity to really shut the doubters up, including myself, is J.J. McCarthy. That's the guy. Can you develop a quarterback from scratch? Because if he does turn out to be a true franchise quarterback, he's exceeding all expectations right now. He looks great in training camp. We'll see what he looks like in preseason. If he turns out to be the guy, that's where KOC can just walk into the office and say, look at this film of this guy. The guy we drafted, I built that. Look how great he is. And then just walk out. I think that's where he can really just close the gap. Vikings versus Raiders preseason game. First preseason game this Saturday. And for my weekly bet that's brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, for the regular season, I'm going to give at least 2 or 3 bets that I like. But preseason, it's a little bit dicey there as far as who's going to play, how long they're going to play for. The one bet I do like for this game is that the total points over 39 between the Vikings and the Raiders. I think if you like offense, you're going to get a semi-heavy dose of that here. I'm assuming Sam Darnold's not going to play in that event. Presumably, Nick Mullins would be the QB1. We know about him. This man is a gunslinger. He has no fear. Oftentimes to a fault, because he will absolutely turn the ball over. However, he will push the ball down the field and give his receivers ample opportunities to make big plays. I would expect at least a touchdown drive by him. Maybe even 10 points total with him at the helm of QB1. A touchdown drive and a Will Reichert field goal. After that, J.J. McCarthy, I would assume he comes in to play up against the third team, fourth team defense of the Raiders, because he's had a great training camp and even having big plays against his own first team defense. It's one thing to play up against your own defense time and time again. Eventually, just off of repetitions, you start to pick up tendencies from the other side. But it's a different situation where you're going up against new players that you haven't seen before. So if he can carry that momentum that he's had in training camp against the third, fourth team defense of the Raiders, I think he will expect some points to be put up on the board with him as well. Jaren Hall, whatever you get, okay, fine. The Vikings, they're not going to go over 39 points by themselves, but Aiden O'Connell, the reason why the Raiders were high on him last year, not so much this year, Gardner Minshew, he's the guy, obviously, but Aiden O'Connell had a very good preseason last year. I would expect for the Raiders with AOC to put points up on the board as well. I think this is going to be a good offensive game. This is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Right now, Get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Next, we're going to talk about the unofficial depth chart that was just released yesterday by the team. On offense, everything's pretty much in order. There's no surprises, at least to me anyway. I do love how at quarterback, I think they did this last year. I swear they did it. Where the second string quarterback is A or B. In this case, it's J.J. McCarthy or Nick Mullins. Last year, I swear, they did that with Nick Mullins or Jaren Hall. But either way, the depth chart of this offense, it's straightforward. Right guard, you got a competition between Ed Ingram and Dalton Risner. Right now, Ed Ingram is the starter. Going to defense, though, that's where there's a couple of things that stick out. Like, oh, okay. Andrew Van Ginkel, for example, he's a starter. I would expect for that to change very quickly once the season starts. Dallas Turner is eventually going to be your guy. Levi Drake Rodriguez as a DN, currently a third stringer. I think he's got an opportunity this preseason to show that he belongs. Second team, maybe even first team, interior defensive line. And then going to special teams, Ryan Wright is your punter for this team. Seth Vernon, he's second string, so apparently it's Ryan Wright's job to lose. Actually, going back to the offense, now that I think about it, something just to point out, not a surprise, but now that it's listed on this unofficial depth chart, it pretty much confirms what we already expected. Going into this training camp, I thought Brandon Powell would be the wide receiver 3, but reports out of training camp, Jalen Nailor has been absolutely crushing it. So with that, we already anticipated that Nailor was going to be the wide receiver 3, and that is the case right here. Brandon Powell is your wide receiver 4. Speaking of wide receivers, Jordan Addison, charged with 2 misdemeanors of DUI. He has a hearing scheduled on October 7th. That's a day after the London game versus the Jets. So I don't know if the team's going to be able to make it the very next day for him. Is he going to miss that game? Likely facing a 3-game suspension. He's had a great training camp. He is that guy. He is that dude to be that elite Robin to Justin Jefferson's Batman. But the thing is, you just got to, whatever's going on with your decision making, you just got to be better. Plain and simple. Because if we have to keep revisiting this topic of, man, this dude's a liability in the general public, he's potentially putting people at risk, and even on a micro scale with the team, we're at the point now where if the suspension is going to happen, if the suspension gets deferred to next year and Addison is available for all of this season, I do believe this team at full strength, they can win 11 games in 2024, whether it's Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, whatever. They are that damn talented. But if it gets enforced this year, it's like one more slip up. Is this liability worth it? To where you're consistently putting yourself in a spot to get in trouble time and time again by the league office because of dumbass decisions that you're putting the team in a spot, your employer in a spot, to where they have to climb themselves out of a deeper hole instead of a neutral field going up against another team that's fully healthy with their players. Is it worth it? You got lucky, man. Last year doing 85 over the speed limit, this offseason being found asleep behind the wheel on a highway. You keep it up, man, your luck's going to run out. Again, thanks to the folks at BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. Please gamble responsibly. We'll see you tomorrow.